Good evening, and welcome to episode 4 of the PMLC Global Nexus podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about PMO maturity assessment frameworks around scoring, evidence, and insights. I would like to welcome you to the show and thank you for joining us for another powerful conversation designed to elevate project leadership, PMO performance, and strategic transformation. I'm your host, Dr. Susie Joseph, and today, if your organization has a project management office or if you're building one, trying to lead one or improve one, then this episode is definitely for you. We're going to unpack how PMO maturity assessments work, what should actually be measured, what kind of evidence matters, and how leaders can turn assessments results into a roadmap for measurable growth. So before we dive in, I would like to just bring my co-host to the stage, Dr. Jimmy. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Dr. Susie. We are back. We're back for this month, another episode to share a lot of nuggets with all of you when we're talking about project management office. And now we're talking about maturity assessment. You know what that means, right, Dr. Susie?
Absolutely.
Stop drinking the milk. Let's start eating the steak.
There you go. There it is. So we have talked about tons of topics around AI for the last several months. And I think now we need to hone in on the PMO and talk about the maturity of the PMO and how we assess that maturity. So let's get into it. When people hear the phrase PMO maturity assessment, I think that they often think sometimes about like a checklist or a scorecard or maybe even a compliance exercise, right? Some organizations, they have tons of dashboards and staff kind of like running around with their, to-do boxes and things like that. But the truth is there's a strong maturity assessment that we do that is much more, and it gives much more insight than just the regular checklist and what the PMs need to do. It's actually a strategic diagnosis tool. Would you agree with that, Dr. Jimmy?
Oh, yes, definitely. And I believe people need to be aware of those tools. And I've had the chance to really, and I'm talking about globally, this is not something in the US organizations, whether you're talking about Turkey, talking about France and England, Italy. These are folks that we partner with when we're talking about PMO, even also in the Middle East and Africa. And the word, or I would say the concept of maturity framework often sound like something that you'll discuss in boardroom. Now, folks tend to, I would say, just ease themselves into do the work. However, not knowing, am I doing the work very well? So I'm glad today this is a topic, and I want folks to really stick with us. We're going to try to demystify this word or this concept, maturity framework. So it is not a big word, it is not a buzzword, but something that you can implement in your organization. It is a tool you must know.
This is so true. And it also helps organizations to understand whether their PMO is simply an administrative PMO, how moderately structured it may be, or truly operating as a high value strategic function within the organization in terms of how it helps the organization to drive execution, its visibility, accountability, as well as business results that most projects will try to achieve within organizations. So in this episode, we're going to break down, just as you said, Dr. Jimmy, but in addition to that, the three major components, which are around frameworks, and that is what should be addressed, scoring, how maturity should be measured, evidence and insights, which is how organizations move from observation to action. And why is because maturity is not just about appearances, it's about capability, it's about consistency, and ultimately it's about the business impact overall, correct?
Yes, definitely. And I'm glad that you make that distinction. Maturity is not about appearances. So yes, you may see some grown people, some grown-ups, they still behave like a child. And you can see a child that has really the mind of a grown-up. So it is really about capability. Do you know how your PM will function, or do you have the evidence? Do you have the evidence when it comes to processes, methodologies, resources, performance metrics? Do you have the evidence that your PMO is not something that you start the first phase and you get stuck there and you've done it multiple times? I even make that comment to a lot of people, Dr. Susie.
Mhm.
Often I hear people, even in their career, let's take this, for instance, everybody's career. I mean, you could be in a job for 10 years. Now, the question is, do you have 10 years experience or do you have 1 year experience for 10 years? That's a big difference.
Yeah,
You
this is
have a
true.
PMO for the longest, but the PMO is still stuck at stage one and the PMO cannot grow, but you don't know any better. This is why you have expert like Dr. Susie and teams, and we can come and help you develop your maturity framework and also implement that and discover where you are.
So let's tell the audience what a PMO maturity assessment really measures and how impactful it can be to their organization. So when we look at that, by definition, a PMO maturity assessment, we know measures and evaluates exactly how well the PMO
Mhm.
is functioning across the key operational and strategic dimensions. But when we hear those things, I mean, what does it really mean to decision makers within organizations? So, with your expertise coming from, a strategic background, what would we say to our decision makers within different organizations to help them understand better why a PMO maturity assessment is necessary and what it actually measures for their organization?
Yeah, so I will phrase it this way. Of course, you talk about the three different components. You talk about the scoring, you talk about the evidence, and you talk also about insights. I would say um, these are the three pillars of assessing your PMO: scoring, evidence, insight. Scoring, evidence, insight. But what I will say in a simple words, if I were to speak with CEO or PMO manager, let's take this jargon, let's take all the talk out. Why do you need a PMO maturity? Is at what is do you develop projects? That's it for me. It is that simple.
Mhm.
The way you implement a project today, can you repeat that tomorrow? Or do you have to reinvent the wheel every single time you implement a project? Every time you implement large projects in your organization, the whole organization has to stop. Everybody has to focus all hands on deck in order for you to deliver that project. Or do you have a framework in place by which you can implement any projects, every project from small to large, and the results are the same success? I often tell people I work with, when you can do things nonchalant or you can do things you try to figure them out every single day, or you can have systems in place. When you have system in place, you don't stress. When you have strategy and system in place, you cannot be stressed and you cannot be overworked. If you're stressed right now, that is probably because you're worrying about the things you have to do today, not the things you have to do tomorrow. And if you don't have a system in place for you to process those things, yes, those things are going to get you stressed. So if you have system in place, if you have a maturity framework in place, that tells you for you to analyze and assess the things, the way you do things in your PMO to show you where you are, those help you develop your systems and strengthen your systems. So short answer, I will tell PMO managers and PMO directors, the value of a maturity framework is to help you assess the systems you have in place so you can execute projects on a repeatable basis.
And directly within the PMO, I think from the execution perspective, I would share that it reveals whether the PMO is reactive, if you have standardized practices and policies and procedures in place. It manages and optimizes the transformation capabilities
Mhm.
within organizations as well, helping them to deliver according to their strategic goals and plans that they may have for that organization. I also feel that the assessment should not only measure the process existence, but the process effectiveness as well. So a PMO maturity assessment is not just busy or, to make sure things are aligned and you have the different tools such as, your registers and logs and templates and
Yeah.
things like that, but it's very data driven and scalable, and it's trusted by leadership to help them make data driven decisions for the organization in terms of which way it wants to go. So in short, a PMO is not mature because it has templates that simply exist. it's mature when governance is actually followed, when data that comes out of that is actually reliable and decisions are informed and results are actually repeatable, as you said before. So I think that kind of sums up our point of what a PMO maturity assessment really measures and how it helps the decision makers within organizations to make the decision if a PMO maturity assessment is actually needed. So let's now transition over to the core framework categories that we want to assess so that you can determine how you can align this directly with your PMO maturity assessment promotion. So the first one I want to get into, Dr. Jimmy, is the governance and processes. And that helps us to determine if decisions are right and if they're clear for organizations, if projects reviewed, and if they're done that consistently. Are there escalation paths that have been defined? And is there an executive oversight and accountability? So let's speak to the leaders first, of course.
Yes, I believe it is really important for the governance. The challenge I often see in many governance are promote senior project managers into the governance, and also they have business managers also there, and I think that's the right way to do it. The challenge there when it comes to governance, not all senior project managers understands PMO components and what's involved in a PMO. I highly recommend you provide them with training. Yes, if you have a PMO that has a lot of reporting staff, meaning staff that deals with analytics, you will get the data. However, you will not be any help to the PMs that needs your help. So having people who have done projects before, having people who understand the decisions and how to make decisions is really the right way to do it. However, a senior PM is not necessarily an asset to a PMO. A senior PM with PMO training is an asset to a PMO. So that is the governance component, and also processes. Your processes have to be very fluid depending on what type of projects that you're managing. Managing projects that is, let's just say, a project that lasts a year versus a project that lasts probably 4 years or 5 years, they're not the same. You cannot apply the same rigor. So there have to be a risk assessment to understand the rigor, to really understand what type of risk that is involved, whether it has to be with reputational risk, whether it has to be financial risk, or whether it has to be with technological risk. And now we have AI risk that you have to put into perspective as well. So government,
it does a really good job of doing the risk assessments and identifying risk and logging and tracking those risks for you as well. So I think I would be remiss if I did not add a little comedy in this point to say they have two of the world's greatest trainers here on screen right now before them, right? Like, where else do you want to go?
That's what I'm saying.
It would not be us if we did not add a little comedy into these segments. So in all seriousness, though, the points that you made are very clear and they're very relevant. And I could not agree with you more about the training component of it. Because if we don't have the training and the necessary skills and tools that go along with that, then we don't have a strong resource pool that we're actually operating within those organizations. So we're looking at the governance processes and making sure that these decisions are clear, that they are right, and that we do have execution, oversight, and accountability. But in order for you to be able to identify that, it takes a keen eye, understanding, as well as the knowledge base that is necessary on how to actually execute and facilitate those things. So moving into project methodologies, we're also looking at, when we do the maturity assessments, evaluating core framework categories. What are we actually assessing during our PMO maturity assessment is what we're talking about here for those of you that just joined. So looking at project methodologies, is there a standard methodology in place? Are teams using it consistently? Is the methodology flexible enough for agile, for hybrid, for any traditional environments that they may operate within the PMO? And are there stage gates, templates, and controls, if they're meaningful or not? Meaning, are you following the actual process that you have set up within your PMO? So Dr. Jimmy, let's go ahead and speak to that for the project methodologies in the PMO.
All right. So some of you who may be following me at globalcomposthub.com, or some of you who've been part of my training, you will hear me say this. There is one methodology I strongly believe that will guarantee you success all the time, 100% of the time, when it comes to project management. One methodology. And if you want to know what that is, just reach out to me via email. I'm joking with you. I'll tell you what
Oh
it
no,
is.
but I'm not. Actually put your information up there so they can.
Thank you so much, Dr. Suzette. Yes, honestly, you know, there is really one methodology.
Right.
And if you think about it, project management did not start in the year 2000, the year 1900. Project management has been around, God knows for how long. How in the world did they do it without having all the processes or everything we have today? The
Mhm.
way they do it is that methodology. Now, I'm not going to say how many human beings lost their lives in the making of those projects, but what I'm saying is there is a component that is very sustainable throughout all of those projects. And that one methodology, are you ready for this? Listen up. It is common sense. Common sense is the best methodology you can apply for projects. Now, let me explain what that means because I also discovered common sense is not that common. And that is the problem we're having. I have seen PMOs implementing agile, hybrid, and even waterfall into the environment. And this is why I'm stressing so much that PMO managers, PMO directors, PMO staff need training. You cannot, as a PMO, being the governance body for your organization, and your folks do not even understand agile project methodologies. They don't understand waterfall. They don't understand hybrid. They don't even understand how to apply it. You just have the rules, and PM just apply them. No, there has to be decision trees in place for PMs, for the young PM that started yesterday to the experienced PM with the 50 whatever years of experience. They follow
Mhm.
the same process so they can arrive at the same methodology when they are deciding on a project. In other words, Johnny cannot be assessing this project and say, I'm going to do it agile. And Jennifer assess the same project and say, I'm going to do it with waterfall.
Mhm.
No. And that means you don't have the right processes in place and system in place to assess your project. Everybody, any time of the day, should arrive at the same conclusion.
Mhm.
And this is what strengthens your project methodology systems in the PMO.
Absolutely. So if we take a look at those methodologies that you just mentioned, as well as when we frame the projects up and determining what methodology should actually be used
Hmm.
appropriately for the scaling of that project at the very beginning. And some in some organizations, they actually determine that within their governance process before they transition that project over to the PMO as well. So they'll do their assessment, they'll do their review of it, and then they'll also determine which methodology may fit best. So what that means is they do have PMO members in their embedded within their governance processes to help them make those determinations as well. So that's just a little golden nugget that I want to throw out there while we're talking about project methodologies, making those decisions and determining the method of flexibility, which one is the right one and the right size for those projects that they're looking to implement within their organization.
And
So,
Dr. Susie, a little nugget before we move forward. One thing I would even bring to a lot of PMO directors: leverage the resources you have today.
yeah.
You have AI. You take AI and you feed AI with your organizational knowledge base, your CMDBs. You include your ITSM in there, and you have all your processes in place, and
Mhm.
you ask it to develop for you, right, a path, a decision tree for the project. So when a project comes in, you enter the criteria of the projects within a form that the generative AI tool can analyze and
Mhm.
then can make a recommendation. And that recommendation is supported by your environment, is supported by the risk of the project, and it is supported also by your past experiences, your lessons learned. Therefore, the tool does not make a recommendation on the fly. It makes recommendation that is customized to your environment. The challenge here, I don't want you to do that where your resources do not understand how the tool arrives at the decision. I'd rather you have the the generative AI create the questionnaire, show you how it makes the decision, teach your PMO staff about the process, and then implement it. So even if you have 100 projects coming to you on a weekly basis, within hours, you can decision all those projects immediately.
God bless AI. So we're so these core frameworks and categories to assess is what we're speaking about for our PMO maturity assessment promotion. So far, we've covered governance and processes. We've talked about the project methodologies, and now we're moving right into the nice segue that you put out there for us, Dr. Jimmy, resource management. So in resource management, questions that we're kind of asking around and within this PMO maturity assessment is resource capacity visible? And I think that that's a huge one. So can leadership forecast demand versus availability? Are the right people assigned to the right initiatives? And is resource planning proactive or is it reactive? So Dr. Jimmy, walk us down that for the resource management, especially the first one. I think that that is so important for leaders. That first one and the last one, the resource capacity visibility, because some people want to just, hide those team resources that are the best at what they do. And the other one, resource planning, proactive or reactive. I got lots to say about that, but by all means.
Oh, my goodness. And my years of project management experience, I believe I'm entering my 26, 27 years now. And I will tell you, day one, when I started, I did not even know what resource capacity was all about. To today, I will tell you this much. I have not seen one organization, and I'm not exaggerating. I have not seen one organization, and the Lord knows I have seen many, that does resource management very well. Now, let me define resource management. I'm not talking about your money. I'm not talking about your equipment. I'm talking about your human resource management.
That's right.
Human resource management. And here's how that is a challenge. But I should probably provide an exception with Agile team that I see that has done it better than if you leverage in waterfall. And let me explain why. So you have this project and you're going to try to implement it. I'm going to go with the worst to the best case scenario.
Okay.
The worst case scenario, you have a team of 5 people and you say, all right, we're going to do this project. I want everybody to get involved to help out. The same team, oftentimes, they're also involved with operations, and you ask them to allocate their time. And they say, I'm going to be part-time in this project. Part-time means 20 hours a week. Now, week one, it's initiation, it's planning. These people are operations, or let's say they're developers. They have nothing to do in the project. So 20 hours goes against the project and they didn't do anything. Now, you ask them to record their time, but guess what? They go to several meetings. They attend a lot of meetings. That is not even necessary to them. And I even have team that says, I want your resource to join the meeting in case something shows up, they can learn about it. And I think this is such a waste of time. You invite somebody to sit on the project in case something shows up. Why don't you figure out what the agenda is and figure out, okay, is that relevant to them or not? And if it's relevant, good. If it's not relevant, leave them out. Now, if something shows up in the meeting that were pertinent to them, then you can send them an email, or next time, invite them to the meeting and say the first 15 minutes, we're going to address this component, provide you with the context, and then you provide your insight, and then we provide you with your to-dos, and then you leave the meeting. That's how you manage a meeting effectively, and you capture resources. Now, these days with AI, you can capture those because once they join the meeting, once they log in, you can pretty much ask people to record their time on project. But still, it's a mundane thing to do. That's the worst case waterfall. Now, I've worked with teams, they say, oh, listen, we know how to manage our resources because we deal with what we call story points for Agile.
Absolutely.
Congratulations, story points. But how does the story points evaluate with the resource? Now, if I have a junior resource, the task may be a story point of 8 points. And if I have a very, I would say, senior resource, the story points can be 3. Now, I could say the story points is 8 because I think I know what I'm doing. But then I discover issues. Then the story points becomes 13. But I did my assessment and my forecast within 8. So this is why resource management is so tough. I believe the projects that get resource management allocated very well are folks that work on full-time projects. Then it is your 40 hours a week. I mean, if you have 2 projects, you split them with 20/20, and there's going to be plus and minus, and then you just live with it.
Yeah.
So that is for me to remove the headache. You just go with some standard number. Now, the resource planning, proactive and reactive, I would recommend companies PMOs to do it more as a proactive. But to your point, Dr. Suzy, you discover an issue, and guess what? You have to call people to address the issue that were not even forecasted to handle the project. You know, you have to. I have a perfect example. I was doing a global project, and we had to order equipment to ship to Mexico, India, and so on and so forth. Everything went well until those equipment reached customs. Then everything gets stuck, and we had to engage other resources from other portions of the company to join the project, which we did not anticipate.
Exactly.
Or I did not anticipate. I thought we had processes in place, things go to custom, everything goes well. But no, where do you think you are? This is international, right? I don't have international. I don't know how things work in Germany and France and Switzerland and Africa. I mean, I believe we have organizations there. We have system and processes in there. I was naive to think you just ship a boatload of servers to, for instance, to India, and then it goes out of custom the next day, right?
Hence, why training is so important, right?
Exactly, exactly. So there you have it.
The one thing I do want to hit, and this is near and dear to my heart, because coming up in my career, as I matured as a PM in different roles and going into program as well as portfolio management, even on the agile side, and then being in administration and doing some of these roles for different organizations, one of the key rules that I would have for myself in planning these meetings, the agenda topics and things like that, is when we look at resources, we do have to understand from a budget perspective, from a finance perspective, that there is actually a dollar amount tied to each resource. And I tell you, I'm dropping this golden nugget here for the entire audience so that they will think about this going forward, because we always run into, resource management, capacity planning, things like that. So my thing is, if you just stop and think for a moment, how much is the total cost of a meeting for each resource that you have at the table during that meeting? So for that 1 hour, if you take the hourly rate for each one of those resources that you're inviting to that meeting, that will truly help you determine if that person actually needs to be in that meeting during that time, because now what you've actually done is taken away from their productivity to bring them into planning, which is pretty much, for lack of a better terms, it's like dead weight. Because you're just meeting, you're not actually, you're doing something strategically, right? You're planning something, you're having conversations, but do they really need to be in the room? And that should help to drive that decision, because you're looking at, wow, I got like 16 people that I've added to this meeting. And if I just calculate hourly rate, let me go back over this list again. Do all 16 of these people need to be in this meeting room at the same time? Who are the critical people? Who are my key decision makers? Who are the people that are going to give, insights, and my subject matter experts bringing value to what it is that we actually need to accomplish as the goal of this meeting? And then I think that will help you begin to narrow down those invites, because the people that you bring to those meetings, they can go back and write summaries or give explanations or just simply share the meeting notes. And then you guys can kind of go from there. So I just wanted to drop that. I don't want to belabor that point, but just giving something, for people to think about, like, is it really necessary to have all of these resources in the same room at the same time for that 1 hour or hour and a half meeting that could be very expensive? Okay.
Here's my rule of thumb, Dr. Suzy. I'll probably say that to everybody. So I as you know, I coach soccer, I coach basketball. I like to have a basketball teams in my meeting. That's my sweet spot. Meaning, if you're 5 people in a meeting, that's when you really have a meeting. If you're gonna go bigger than that, just have a soccer team. 11 people should be the maximum you have in a project meeting. 11 people, it is way, way too much. If you have 1 hour, think about it. If you have 1 hour with 11 people in a meeting, okay, that means for everybody to participate very well, it has to be 5 minutes per person. 5 minutes per person. If you cannot, meaning I just put 11 people in a room, okay, for 1 hour. To your point, if I'm paying everybody $80 an hour, let's just go with that number.
Okay.
Think about how much money I just paid. 11 people, $880 I just spent, right? And for $80 an hour, your contribution is only 5 minutes.
That's right.
5 minutes. In the rest of the 55 minutes, if you're in the room, I'd rather have you close your computer. At least I give you $80 just so that you can listen, versus you on a Zoom and you're not even showing your face, meaning you're multitasking, and I just give you $80 for nothing. So think about it. If you don't have the sweet spot should be 5 people to be in the room.
That's right.
If you have more than 5 people, okay, think about it. At least 5 people, that is 12 minutes per person in the meeting. If you go to 11, that is 5 minutes.
I'm just driving that point home, because that's exactly what it's all about, and making sure that we manage those resources, not just the resource capacity, the planning, but the budget that's associated with that as well, and do it very, very well. So this is going to kind of pivot us into the performance metrics, right? So again, we're talking about core framework categories to assess during a PMO maturity assessment. We're also, sounds like, giving out golden nuggets from our experience along the way and different roles that we've held at organizations around, like, governance and processes, project methodologies, resource management. It's just we just wrapped that topic up, and now we're moving into performance metrics, which is what is actually being measured during the PMO maturity assessment. Are KPIs tied to business value? Does leadership receive useful dashboards? And are project success indicators based on outcomes and not just the activity, right? So where, Dr. Jimmy, do we want to start with that?
I would say to evaluate value, the performance metrics should focus on value. Let me give an example. As a matter of fact, I was teaching project management on Thursday a couple of weeks ago. And I even asked them this question. Let's just say you have, let's say you're building, as a matter of fact, I did have a couple of good examples. One of them is that famous theater thing that's in Australia. It takes 10 years of schedule and $80 million over budget. And I asked folks, is that success or failure? Something that took 10 years. I mean, think about it. If a project is 10 days beyond schedule, we call that a failure. If something that probably $8,000 past their budget, we call that a failure. Now, this is a landmark in Australia that took 10 years past the schedule and $80 million over budget. So by all definition, it was a failure. However, it is not a great source of income for the country, and it's a landmark for the country. Versus building an infrastructure or a project that is under budget, that is on time, and then after that you destroy it. A perfect example: I was doing a project. We spent 2 years implementing the project. It wasn't a new application we're trying to deploy. And at the end, we're going to have a celebration because the project was on time and under budget and within scope. Quality was there. Perfect success. When I mean perfect success, this was it. This was, as a matter of fact, we use that, the lessons learned. This is how you manage projects.
Mm-hmm.
And the day we are celebrating the project, it was the day we get another email that says we need to have another project to undo everything we just did. Meaning the project had no value, no
Exactly.
business value whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, for PMO directors, I said you need to evaluate the value of the project. That is the bottom line. Everything else is really I would say it's a dance, not that's not right what I'm looking for. Everything else is dressing things up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you want to dress things up, you should definitely have your project health and also your portfolio health as far as the success rate I was talking about. Percentage of projects, percentage of portfolios delivered on time within budget and achieving their stated benefits. I'm going to the real thing with you. I'm going to say that is good so
Mm-hmm.
that when people don't go nuts. But at the end of the day, it's value. You need to have your governance and process maturity. What does that mean? Standard process adherence. How many projects got done, people doing cowboy things, versus how many projects got done leveraging the processes that we have in place? Okay. Benefits and value realization. That's the key. I'm going to repeat it. Benefit realization, value realization. That means percentage of projects would define benefits that you are tracking, that you're implementing. Okay. And the others will be probably PMO specific operating metrics, people and capability metrics, meaning the percentage of PMs using PMO methodology tools in support versus working ad hoc. Um, uh, the the bottom line for me will be the following: it is all about value. As a matter of fact, the Project Management Institute recognized this for the PMBOK version 8. You will see we go away from what I would call the task. Uh, you have effort, you have outcome, and also you have value. The focus must be on value. Meaning, if you have a project that is over budget, that is past the schedule, that does not mean the project is a failure if the value you get out of that project is successful. I'm going to give you one last example. As a matter of fact, I was giving that example. I'm not going to name the institution to protect uh, the confidentiality. So let's say you have an institution that for patients healthcare, they want to institute a program to cut wait time by, let's just say, from an hour to 30 minutes, right? And by doing so, we believe doctors will be able to see more patients to make more money, right? So let's rephrase that. You're going to cut wait time by 30 minutes, and you want that project, you want to install all those new processes within a month. So within 30 days, we need to come up with new processes to cut people going to that clinic from 1 hour wait to 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And you've done it, right? Project successful. Or you failed, where instead of 30 minutes, people are still waiting 1 hour instead of doing it in 30 days. Now this thing takes like 40 days, but the processes are in place. The value. People took 1 hour because when they come to talk to the doctor start talk to them about their family, Johnny playing basketball, meaning they took 30 minutes socializing and 30 minutes really do the real work.
Mm-hmm.
By doing that, the reason it takes long, that is because now these people are so satisfied. Now they refer more people to the clinic. So you could have your 30 minutes and people attending the clinic remains, let's say, 100, or you can still struggle with the 1 hour, and now your number is 1,000. Okay, instead of doing it in 30 days, you end up doing it in 90 days to make it more streamlined. But because now you have more people still waiting for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So which one is success? What is the value? The value is a good care And the value is to build rapport between your patients and the doctor. That's the value. The value is not people come in, get check in, check out, and go home. Wait, that's not really the value. So, what to measure, Dr. Susie? Benefits realization and values.
And I think it's also important to call out that as we wrap this topic up, that the strongest PMOs do not measure everything. And that kind of relates to the two examples that you just shared with us, but they actually measure what matters most. That's the value. Exactly. All right. So we're going to go ahead and transition over now, Dr. Jimmy, to PMO scoring models. And we're looking at should scoring be simple enough to use, but robust enough to guide decisions. And we're taking a look. So at PMLC, we use the maturity assessment scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the initial, 2 being developing, 3 being defined, 4 managed, and 5 being optimized. So if I were to explain this to our audience, level 1 at the initial level, and let me go ahead and air this across the screen for the different levels so people can follow along with me. So those level 1 would be the initial level, and that is the inconsistent, informal, and reactive. So we're looking at that. So if your PMO scores as a level 1, this is what that means, that they're inconsistent processes, very informal PMO, and you have a more reactive type of PMO. Level 2 means that the PMO is actually developing. So you do have some structured, but yet uneven adoption practices within your PMO. So there's potential for strengthening in that area as well. That could be speaking to your policies, procedures, and some of the processes that you may even have in place. Level 3 is more, you have a more defined PMO, right? So you have the documented processes and your consistency is a little bit stronger. So you may actually be able to deliver a strong project at a level 3 because you have actually defined what the PMO does in support of that strategic delivery for the organization. Level 4 is more managed, and that is where the PMO is more metrics driven. They have monitored processes in place, and they can do things in a repeatable fashion. So that means that this PMO, for example, just an example, they may be using their lessons learned repositories to go back to see where they can do things differently, how they can do them better, what other organizational assets they can actually pull forward. They're look into some of the environmental factors that are kind of going on and how they manage that within the organization. So moving on to level 5, that is where the PMO is more optimized, meaning they are basically at continuous improvement. So they are continuously improving their processes. They are looking strategically forward facing. These to me are the PMOs where they're like, bring AI on. We are ready, right? We've got this in place. We kind of know what tools and artifacts we're using. So just bring it on. Let's implement and kind of just embed AI tools and policies, practices, compliance, governance into our existing processes. And it won't break us because we actually have a more defined process in place, and we're able to optimize it with utilization and leverage of different tools that we can embed within our PMO. So that means that these PMOs are more aligned with the enterprise. They're following right along with the strategy. They're picking it up, and they know how to robustly move through that. That's level 5 optimization. So they're always looking at how to do things better, and they're actually defined to be able to do that. Now, some of the important insights around the scoring, it must be based on evidence and not option. Meaning, what is your actual reality and not your opinion of if your PMO is strong or not. So it must be based on the evidence that the PMO can actually handle this and not the opinion of the leader that the PMO can handle it. So what evidence do you have in place? What tools, processes, policies, procedures do you actually have in place to support the evidence? What are you measuring? The evidence and not your opinion, saying that, well, we have strong PMOs that have been here, PMs that have been here for 10 and 15 years. They kind of know what they're doing. So we should be able to do this without a hitch. That's not true, because if you don't have the evidence to support it, then what you're doing is setting the PMO up for failure. Inflated self-rating create blind spots. So that along to me still goes along with the evidence. It's not about what you think, it's about what you're actually doing, how the PMO is actually performing. And that is what we're going to come in to assess. It's the purpose of scoring is not to impress anyone, it's actually to improve the actual PMO. So a maturity score is only useful when it reflects the reality of what's actually happening within the PMO. So we would do an honest scoring assessment that would create better strategy and turn that into an action item roadmap for the organization on points that they would need to improve within their PMO. And those are the actual services that PMLC Consulting Group would offer through our PMO maturity assessment, and then taking that assessment and making it into a action item roadmap for the organization. So Dr. Jimmy, what is your input there for the different levels?
But yeah, to be mindful of the time, I'm going to make it very simple to them. Back in 2020, well, COVID time, I decided to do some cooking, and my wife told me, "Congratulations, find the ingredients and have fun." I'm like, "All right, no problem." So talk about what was the maturity level when it comes to cooking. I'm a great taster. I always part of the tasting team at work when it comes to food, but not me, not cooking. But guess what? I took on the challenge. Level 1. Think of it this way: you're hungry, you open the fridge, you just throw whatever you find in the pan. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's a disaster. That's where I started. My friend, that's your level 1. Level 2, you've got a few recipes that you follow. You can make spaghetti consistently now. For the PMO, this means basic processes are established. You have templates, but they might only be used on big projects. Where level 1 for the PMO, this is the project succeed when the project manager work 80 hours a week. If your project managers are working so hard, you at level 1. If you have processes that are repeatable, you're at level 2. Level 3, things are defined. That's the meal prep phase. You meal plan, you have grocery shop efficiently, Uber Eats, whatever you call it. Your kitchen is well organized. I'm not there yet. All right. Your PMO at level 3 has standardized process across the entire organization. Everybody speaks the same language. Level 4, I'm not just cooking, I'm tracking proteins, calories, and cost per meal. I'm still at level 2 when it comes to cooking. But your level 4 PMO is driven by metrics. You can predict project performance and resource bottlenecks. Level 5, optimize. You continuously innovate. I'm at level 5 because I can do Uber Eats, I can do DoorDash. That's my level 5. Somebody delivered the meal to me, right? But you, as a project manager, as a PMO, your level 5 must be a strategic partner with your business, constantly improving and adapting to the business needs. And I'm in agreement with you, Dr. Suzy. I always tell my team, if it's not on paper, it does not exist.
That's right.
The notion you're going to tell me you know how to do it, what you want me to believe you, of course I believe you. But show me the evidence. Don't just tell me. I need you to show me. That is plain and simple.
The Mississippi State, show me, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So let's tie in some of the items that count as evidence into this discussion as well. So here are some examples for our audience of what actually counts as evidence for the assessment. So if you have governance charters, project intake documents, standard operating procedures, I mentioned that quite frequently during the levels to kind of drive that point home. The resource plans, portfolio dashboards, KPI reports, audit results, stakeholder feedback, assessment tools that you use, meeting cadence and review artifacts, lessons learned documentation. Those things will actually count as evidence in the PMO maturity assessment. So when we come out and do those assessments for organizations, these are some of the things that we're looking for as supporting evidence to do the scoring and the assessment for the PMO. All right. So Dr. Jimmy, as we suggested, maturity is not proven by the documentation alone. It's proven by the behavior and the consistency of the PMO, which actually yields the results and what it is that we're measuring for the PMO. So if we were to then now move into turning the findings of our PMO maturity assessment and the scoring that we've actually developed now, how would we move that into the realm of an insight for an organization to give them the next steps of what they need to assess, how they can strengthen their PMO, identify the gaps, the risk, and the strategic opportunities from the assessment that we've actually performed?
For me, it is this. So what? You've got your score. You've backed it up with cold hard evidence. So what now? This takes us to the insight. So scoring a level 2 is not a failure. It's a baseline. It gives you insight on things you have to do to take your work to the next level so that you can bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. I have a little process that I like to implement and bring to fruition. I call it IPO. Yeah, I might use in the financial sector. It's input, process, output. What's your input? What's your processes, and what's your output? You can judge with the input and the output. You know what your input is because that's what you use to do things. Now you need to evaluate your output, and your output will tell you where you are, what level you are, and that helps you redefine your processes. Now, your evidence can show your project initiation phase is incredibly strong, but your project closure phase is a ghost down. Nobody is doing lessons learned. That will impact your output. Your insight here is clear. You are bleeding institutional knowledge. So this is the purpose of doing the scoring. It is the purpose of getting the evidence so you can get the insights. So instead of trying to boil the ocean and jump from level 2 to level 4 overnight, unless you stop cooking, you just order. Your insight, meaning you start putting your resource trying to learn new things and then do production, do operations. You invite experts to come into your organization to show you how to do it. That's what I mean by instead of cooking, you order things. Your insight will give you a targeted roadmap. You might say for the next quarter, our only PMO improvement goal is to achieve 100% compliance on project closure documentation. Now, the challenge you're going to have is if your people do not know how to do it, you will always find yourself in the rat race. That's why you have to bring people who know how to do these things to show you how to do it.
Absolutely. And then how could we also level up in using AI strategy to support that? Exactly. Win for everyone, right? So in these PMO maturity assessments, we're going to now implement some of our AI strategy. And this ties beautifully into all of the things that we've discussed today. So the modern PMOs, they must align with the organizational AI strategies. AI can improve some of the forecasting, reporting, the risk, the knowledge retrieval, and decision support. But it cannot fix. This is what I want the audience to know today. AI can absolutely not fix a PMO that lacks structure, one that lacks governance, or that has no trusted data, right? So PMOs are mature in the best position when they have level 5 optimization and they're moving in that because they have taken time to define their policies, their procedures, and processes within that PMO. And this is how we move to successfully implement and utilize AI. And I know, again, AI is one of your very favorite topics. So here you go. There's your airtime for AI.
I would keep it very simple. AI does not replace your PMO maturity. It amplifies it. If your PMO foundation is weak, AI will only scale the confusion faster. This is why you have to bring people to help you out. Now, if your processes are great, you know what you're doing, AI will fast track that and you will really enjoy life. But if you're going to take AI, you think going to fix your broken processes, you have to rethink that again.
Absolutely. Now, Dr. Jimmy, today's episode is proudly aligned with the work that PMLC Consulting Group is doing, which helps organizations strengthen project delivery through its PMO maturity assessment services. So if you've ever asked questions, is our PMO performing at its best? Our governance process is effective? Are our project management methodologies consistent? Are we managing resources strategically? Are we measuring the right performance metrics? Then a PMO maturity assessment may be exactly what your organization needs. So PMLC Consulting Group helps leaders gain insight into PMO strengths and improvement areas where we identify strategic opportunities to enhance the PMO value. We also help to develop the roadmap for you for PMO excellence, as well as align the PMO execution with broader organizational and AI strategies. So as we move through this discussion, Dr. Jimmy, I just wanted to continue to put that out there for our PMO maturity assessments. And also, there was one thing that I wanted to mention that we're doing specifically for our TSA agents. This is our way of kind of giving back to the community based on our current or most recent government shutdown with the Department of Homeland Security as it relates to our TSA officers. So this message is for them exclusively. If they're looking for career change, we are offering in partnership with KBEX Global Consulting, some of the different services that they offer in terms of career change consulting, the interview prep, and resume writing for those TSAs that are looking to pivot or shift into project management. So we're going to take a moment to share that we have a special offer for the professional community that already brings in many of the skills needed to thrive in this area if they're a TSA, with their leadership, with their organization, with understanding knowledge of how things move and process, being on time and on schedule. So through Project Management Learning Center, we're proud to support the airport professionals and frontline security personnel who are ready to explore a career path in project management. So for TSA professionals that already operate in a high responsibility environment, this will require leadership, diligence, communication, organization, problem solving, and process discipline, which is also interchangeable with the project management profession. These are not just security skills that you guys possess, but these are also project management skills that can be easily translatable into the profession. So PMLC offers that support to help you through this transition if you're interested in a career change through the consulting, the interview preparation, the resume writing, and flexible online learning for those that may be interested in learning more or transitioning into project management. Yes. I love giving back to the community. All right. So in closing, we talked about today the PMO maturity assessments, how we help organizations move from assumption to clarity. We also touched on some of the strong frameworks where we focus on governance, methodology, resource management, and performance metrics, the scoring, and how it should be evidence-based and practical, insights that lead into prioritized action, and maturity of the PMO, and how we're better positioning ourselves for strategic growth, digital transformation, and AI adoption. So, Dr. Jimmy, as we close today, what would you leave our audience with? What do we think?
Wow, I believe we have provided what I call the essence when it comes to a PMO maturity framework. So my statement, my closing statement will be: don't be afraid of it. It is needed. It is not something that's only in the boardroom. It is something for you to understand areas that you should be assessed. That's what we call the framework. How maturity should be measured. That's what we call about the score. That's what we call the scoring, and how your organization move from observation to action. You need the framework, so you need to know the what. You need to do the scoring, so you need to know the how, and you need to have the insight, so that it is not you just do it and that's it. Otherwise, you're gonna it's gonna be Groundhog Day. So again, engage professionals who can help you. However, it is something that you must do.
Yeah. And for my final words, I would just say that a PMO maturity assessment is not about check boxes, in our execution space. It's about creating the visibility, building discipline, improving the value delivery that we discussed, also positioning the PMO as a strategic asset to the organization. So understanding the resource, the capacity, the training that is involved in that as well, to make sure that they're upskilled and ready to perform. So if your PMO needs clearer governance, stronger methodologies, better resource alignment, or more meaningful performance metrics, now is the time to assess, to score, and to act act by reaching out to us, to do that PMO maturity assessment. And if you're an individual looking to build your career in project management, especially again, if you're a TSA officer or another professional with transferable leadership skills, then this is also your moment to explore what is next through myself or Dr. Jimmy at PML Learning Center, pmlearningcenter.com. So we do offer the PMP, CAPM training courses, as well as many others. And for Dr. Jimmy and myself, we also offer the CAPMO, the CBPMO, and the Agile PMO consultant training. Dr. Jimmy also performs the organizational leadership speaking engagements. I am so excited. I always get excited about that part because I love when I see you speaking to leaders and organizations and leaving them with the different analogies that you talk about and how you frame up the stories. I think it always kind of hits home for them. And as well for PMLC Consulting, we're the execution side, so we get things done, right? We're not sitting back trying to help you with the beautiful stories that Dr. Jimmy is giving you. Once you and Dr. Jimmy talk about the story and what it is that you want to deliver, we're the ones that come in, roll up our sleeves and just say, okay, this is our timeline. Let's go forth and get it done. We're going to get it done within the timeline, on schedule, within scope, and on budget, correct? So those are things that I wanted to leave you with today. And Dr. Jimmy, again, as always, it is my pleasure to co-host with you. And today we were talking about the PMO maturity assessment frameworks, scoring, evidence, and insights. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. See you next time.